we now commence the panel discussions. We are at the Aryabhat Hall. The brainstorming begins as Indian manufacturing turns green and nation's top power consumers share their journey. Partnering this session is Cleantech Solar. To take this topic forward, may I first invite on stage Shri Manu Srivastav, Principal Secretary, Government of Madhya Pradesh, our session chair. Thank you, sir. Next up, may I call upon Mr. Dinesh Yadav, Director and CEO, Arvind Envisol Limited. We are also joined by Mr. Ashish Maheshwari, Southeast Asia Head, Energy, Strategic Sourcing and Procurement, Kargil. May I now request Mrs. Jyoti Gulia, the founder of JMK Research and Analytics, to join in. May we have a round of applause to greet ma'am. The moderator for the session is Dr. Anurag Joshi, Head Business Development India, Cleantech Solar. It's over to the moderator now. It's over to you, Dr. Joshi.
Well, first of all, thank you everyone. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. Very special thank you to our esteemed panelists here who have agreed to come and tell you about their experience and their journey through the industry and answer some of our questions. We will start with a very brief introduction of the speakers, and we will follow that by a few slides from Jyoti trying to tell us about how the industry has evolved on a overall scale, and then we will sort of jump into the questions. So with that, again, like I said, a very warm welcome to all of you. Let me start the introductions. Immediately on my left is Shri Manu Srivastav, Principal Secretary, Government of MP. Next to him, Mr. Dinesh Yadav, who is the CEO of Arvind Envisol and also responsible for lots of power-related projects for Arvind Limited in general. And then next up is Ashish Maheshwari, who not only oversees India but all of Southeast Asia from the perspective of energy procurement. Right? And last but not the least, we have Jyoti Gulia, who is the founder of JMK Research and Analytics, and they have been doing some fantastic work to give you a very good idea of where the industry seems to be headed. So with that, and we will give the speakers the opportunity to tell us more about their organization and their journey, when you start the round of questions. But let's first start with an overall picture of the industry, and I can guarantee that some of you will be surprised in terms of where we have gotten in the space of C&I, which is pretty much the B2B kind of business space, if you will. So with that, Jyoti, I hand it to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Cleantech team, for giving me this opportunity to be part of this session today. Thank you to all the co-panelists also to be part of the session. To just set the context for our discussion today, I just want to give you a very brief runway of how things are moving in the C&I segment in RE space in India. So, as you can see broadly from this slide, in terms of RE power procurement options for C&I consumers, there are two ways. Either they can get a long-term RE power procurement through corporate PPA mode, as part of which the project can be on the site, on the rooftop, or the project can be an open access project or off-site solar park. They can procure the power. And then from the short-term market, they have the option of power exchanges. And then there is another new option that DISCOMs are also providing now, which is green energy tariffs. So that is also another option that C&I consumers can take. Now let's take a look at how this sector has evolved in terms of numbers. Next slide, please. Yeah. As you can see, from the first chart that is there, over the years, the installations in the CNI segment in the open access space, there has been some ups and downs. The landmark year, I would say, was financial year 2018, where close to 3 gigawatt was installed, I would say, and majority of those installations were in Karnataka. And that is because of a very favorable state policy that was announced in that year, which led to a lot of open access installations during that. And as part of that policy, a lot of waivers were given on the open access charges and all. So one favorable state policy can lead to this much significant uptake in installations. That's a significant thing to see here from this chart. Then even financial year 2022, I would say was a good year in terms of the installations in the open access market. Almost 1.9 gigawatt has been installed last financial year, and we are hoping that the next financial year, again, it will be historical year where capacities we are expecting to cross 3.5 gigawatt, the annual additions here I'm talking about. Then even on the rooftop side, the installations in the CNI segment have been consistently growing year on year, except 2020, where because of COVID-19, there were some bit of delays and installations were lesser. But I think even in rooftop, we are expecting that, this year again, it will be the maximum installations, and we're expecting in the CNI segment almost 2.6 gigawatt will be installed, so on-site installations. So broadly saying, the next financial year 2023, almost 6 gigawatt of installations we are expecting in the CNI segment, both open access space and rooftop space. And in terms of statewide split, you can see that the top 3 industrial states of India are the hubs where maximum installations are happening. The torchbearer is Karnataka, obviously because of a favorable policy I've told for 2018 now. And in total, according to GMK Research estimates, I think we have almost 18 gigawatt of cumulative CNI corporate PP installations in India as of March 2022. Now, there are some trends that we are seeing, I would see not only the decarbonization goals, but I think over the years, the falling technology costs of the renewable are some of the key drivers for these kind of installations. This slide is talking about what are the emerging trends and what are the upcoming trends. So in the emerging trends, we have seen in last, I would say, 1 or 2 years, there are a lot of utility scale IPPs who were earlier focusing on DISCOM PPA and tender-based projects. They have also started scouting this market. Players like Renew, Avada, O2 Power, they are also building their planning to build their huge portfolio in this market. Key reasons for this is, there is a lot of awareness in the CNI segment now in terms of renewable energy. Because of the financing, the maturity in the financing and open access market, that is another prime reason for this trend that we have seen. And third most, which is the most significant trend, is because of the slowdown in the tender activity in state and central auctions, you're seeing a lot of these IPPs are venturing into this attractive opportunity now. Then another interesting development that we have seen in the open access space is the development of wind-solar hybrid market. So some states have come up with wind-solar hybrid policies. 4 or 5 states have come up. And Gujarat has been one of the most favorable states who has come up with a wind-solar hybrid policy. Specifically for the open access market also, there were some bit of waivers. So that makes an attractive market again. The Gujarat is an attractive market. So wind-solar hybrid is also the new model. Then we are seeing that there is an option of green power markets now through green term ahead market, green day ahead market, which is gaining traction, which are basically alternative sources of revenue for project developers, and they also give some bit of safety mechanism to developers when, policy hurdles like banking restrictions on a monthly basis. These are the options that they can explore. When they are facing delays in the open access approval while the plan got commissioned, they can still get some bit of revenue through these platforms. So I think this is a very interesting, step that's been taken. And I think till now, more than 8,000 million units have been traded in these platforms in the RE space. Now, these are the trends which we are already seeing in last 1.5 years. And what could be the upcoming trend? So we have been in touch with a lot of developers, installers, CNI consumers, and people have already started talking about at least some of these trends, which is integration of energy storage in CNI project. But right now, the cost economics are not that great. But yes, people are actively exploring this opportunity also. Then the option of green tariffs, which is gaining support. So DISCOMs are providing the option of green tariffs, which are at a premium than their normal CNI tariffs also. But for companies, the RE100 companies who are focused on going net zero towards the decarbonization goals also, a lot of entities are also exploring this market now. And then the virtual power purchase market, which has been a very significant market in United States. It has also started making noises in India market. But I think as part of this panel discussion today, we will talk a lot more about some of these aspects that I've shown you in these slides. And I think, Anuvrat, over to you now to take it up. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Jyoti. This is a lot of information in a few slides, and we didn't try to spend too much time on it, but we understand that not all of it may have been grasped right in the first go. To the team, to the audiovisual team, we may need to refer to one or two of these slides as we go. I hope that will not be a problem. If we need to, we will let you know. Okay. All right. So with that. Actually, can we just present the second slide, go back to the second slide, and leave it up there? Excellent. So let's fire away, all right? The first question, the adoption of renewable by the CNI segment, or essentially the power user of India who are not DISCOMs. All right, that's the direct usage of power. Now, in this space, we include essentially the public sector as well. Not that we do include, that we choose to include. We should include the public sector as well, because everything except DISCOM is a consumer. So we are referring to, actually, when we say commercial and industrial, we should just call it C segment, the consumer segment, other than the residential segment. Residential segment has its own dynamics, and we kind of have a question on it towards the end. So with that in mind, Manu sir, let me ask you, a unlikely consumer of power who have switched to a lot of renewable, largely solar, I believe, has been the public sector. And we are obviously, as mentioned, not talking about the DISCOMs here. Public sector has been a surprisingly and unlikely candidate, and provided a lot of those 18 gigawatts. And by the way, just to give everybody here a picture, right, that 18 is about 20% of the installed renewable capacity in India. So it's not, it's a significant amount of heavy lifting that's being done by the B2B sector. So with that, enough comments from me. Over to you, Manu sir.
I agree that government or the public domain has been a comparatively small beneficiary of the lowering of prices of solar, especially solar rooftop. However, I would say that it is the easiest to really implement projects in that sector, because one of the biggest challenges that all rooftop developers and anyone who's working in sector would understand is the challenge of net metering. And now the net metering, the resistance of DISCOMs to net metering is comparatively diluted when the consumer is a government organization. So, compared to, let's say, an industry, if there is a collectorate getting net metering, then it's far easier to get the net metering done. The other aspect I would say is that the economic rationale is increasingly driving a lot of government decisions. The fact that, I mean, why would an industry go for green power? A part of it is because it is green and it's good for the environment, but largely the decision is driven by economics, that it makes, it leads to savings. Large number of government organizations are themselves guided by this. I mean, I can share from my personal experience that it is the easiest to convince government organizations. So what I always say when I talk of rooftop solar projects, and I talk a lot about them, is I say three things. Zero investment, that is the PPP model, that is what we are talking about here, the developer model. Savings from day one, and moving towards net zero. So this is something that is very easy to sell. I mean, I can share my yesterday's experience. I interacted, there is something called Footwear Design Development Institute, FDDI. It is somewhere, I think, close to where we are, somewhere in Noida. And they have 12 campuses throughout the country. Now, I haven't met the gentleman who heads it, but he got in touch with me because he knew that in Madhya Pradesh we had implemented some good projects. So I sent some mail to him explaining the project. So he has, I mean, he spoke to me once earlier, then I sent all the documents to him, he read all of them, he spoke to me yesterday. So he's very clear, they want to set up rooftop solar projects on all these 12 campuses across FDDI. So the reason that they are interested is that it is leading to savings. So, I mean, while it is obviously true for commerce and industry in the CNI sense, which is driven by profits as a motive, it is as true for government organizations who are increasingly seeking economic savings as a rationale for what they're doing. And I must say that one viewpoint that as a private sector many of you might have, that it's a zero-sum game for the government. What, let's say, some government organizations might gain, the DISCOMs would lose. So why would the government be interested? So firstly, I must tell you that government as one entity is a myth. Like humanity is a myth. I mean, well, we talk about humanity, but there is no such thing as humanity. Many rational people would say the same about nations, but it would not be politically appropriate for me to talk like that at all. So at least what humanity one can say that. The same thing is true for government. There is no such thing as government which thinks with one mind. Every department has its own mind, its own interests. Every organization has its own interests. So FDDI sitting in Noida would not have the interests of whichever DISCOM is there in Noida, I don't know, Western DISCOM or whatever. They would not have the interests of Western DISCOM of UP at their heart. Now, this is true because FDDI is in Government of India and UP DISCOM supposedly belongs to UP government. But this would be equally true if both the organizations were to be with the same state government. So MP Health Department is not bothered about what's happening to MP DISCOMs. And this is true even if the same person were to be in the same organizations. So I have the most beautiful example of this detachment from personal detachment. So there was some Mr. Khan, I remember, who was sending a letter from one organization to another. So the letter he wrote was a seventh reminder with a lot of anger. The seventh reminder he have not replied. But the interesting part is he was holding both the posts. So it was a DO letter addressed from Mr. Khan to Mr. Khan, expressing a lot of anguish that, I've written you 7 times, you've not responded. So the point I was trying to make was that, whatever organization people are heading, people are interested in the interests of, or focused on the interest of that organization at that time. So even someone who has been MD DISCOM, once he or she moves to, let's say, health department, would then start thinking about the savings to health department, even if it comes at a loss to the DISCOMs. So these are some short points that I had.
No, thank you very much. And I mean, in addition to this, so the points which are focused a lot on the rooftop sector, I mean, the public sector, essentially the government sector, I mean, driven by excellent leaders like yourself. For example, 750 megawatts out of these 18 gigawatts is actually what the Delhi Metro Rail Corporation is consuming from Riva in, of solar power. So in other words, what we are trying to say is not only is the public sector relevant for various rooftop segments, it can be an open access consumer just like any other of the rest whom I'll come to immediately after.
So apart from Delhi Metro, the next project we set up is actually supplying to Indian Railways in 9 states. And the reason again is economic savings. And Indian Railways is driven by economic considerations. So, like Delhi Metro also talks a lot about it being a green decision. But as I was involved in the decision-making process, I can share with you, it was only and only about economic savings. So economic savings is what drives government organizations as much, even though the general perception very often could be that, efficiency doesn't matter to the government, but I suppose it does, and there are examples like Delhi Metro which are being done well.
Yeah, and not to sort of stay too long on the point, but later in this agenda, we'll try to come to the concepts of ISTS and how to enable it. I mean, lo and behold, DMRC has already done that and doing that, and Manu sir, we might come back to you on when we come to that topic as well. So we are talking about journeys that industry or individual large corporates committed to renewable, or increasing the renewable mix in their energy usage have had, the journey, the path that they have taken. I mean, there are a few journeys that I've have observed as closely and feel as or more a part of than that of Arvind Mills, who from a long time ago have been committed to this segment, both from the savings perspective and from the commitment to the green perspective. So Mr. Yadav, who you've sort of overseen that over more than a decade, would love to hear your the journey of Arvind Mills through both the power segment and a little bit about your even broader commitment to the environment via your water effort in the water segment. We said we'll make it interesting, so it'll not just be about solar and wind, we'll include water as well.
Thank you, Anuradh, and thank you, Cleantech, for inviting here and allowing me to share my experience and Arvind Mills' experience. So basically, I am a mechanical engineer. So water is I mean, it is always, it's like two eyes, environment and energy. So for 16 years, the first 16 years of my career was into a utility company. And I was doing projects on power, and I was operating power plants which were on conventional fuel. In 87, we established India's first combined cycle cogeneration power plant of 100 megawatt in that utility company in Ahmedabad. And that is where I realized that when you see the fumes coming out from a coal-based power plant to a gas-based power plant, where you have no environmental issues except NOx and all, for which there are solutions. But after that, when I joined Arvind Mills and in 1997, and since then I am with this company because of the platform given to me to freely work on these two platforms of energy and environment. And by chance, one fine morning, I was told that why don't you look after this effluent treatment plant, which was being installed at that time. And I told, I don't know anything about water. All I know is the turbines and power. But it was insisted on me that, no, it will be good for you. You hire technocrats if you don't know. And it so happened that we went into a financial trouble, and management told me to stop that effluent treatment plant. Now, what this effluent treatment plant was, it was 1 crore liter per day, zero liquid discharge facility in 1997, when no regulator anywhere in India was asking for zero liquid discharge. So it was a very ambitious project. It was first time in Asia that effluent was fed into membranes for recycling. So I never realized, because I didn't knew anything about water. And before I can understand anything, I was called and told immediately after commission that you closed down. And when I went to that day, I went to my office and went up on a building, and I saw that time it was 80 lakh liter water flowing. And I could see that this much amount of water flowing like river, if every day we withdraw this water from ground, and then treating it to certain level, the norms prevailing that time, even at that norms, if we treat and discharge somewhere, it will have a mammoth impact on the environment, because it will spoil good water, it will spoil earth, and so on. So I don't know what happened, but next day morning I went to my chairman and I said, come what may, I will not stop this plant. I will run it. And he also knew that we can't stop, but he said you have to run it at a 50% cost. And we took that challenge. We brought down the cost to 30% with various innovations. I had a very excellent team that time. And we made first time in India zero liquid discharge happening in true sense. And today this plant not only recycles 100% of water, not a single drop being discharged, but all the waste, solid waste which comes out, including salt, including sludge, everything is being reused. So it's in true sense recycling facility. The facility has gone up from 10,000 or 1 crore liter to 2 crore liter now. But what I want to say, I'm coming to renewable now, is that where there is a will, there is a way. Today actually, post that after 10 years, I was to start a new business. And I can very proudly say that I'm running a water treatment company now, which is doing a lot of projects, not only in India, but abroad. It's a 500 crore plus company. But whenever I talk, I don't talk about the technology and the balance sheet numbers. I always say we are recycling more than 10 ml, more than 85 mld water every day in different projects. And that is what is satisfying to us. So we have a scoreboard in my office where we say now 86 million, 87 mld plant, that much amount of water we recycle. And the amount of professional and personal satisfaction which comes from doing something for society is enormous, and that is what is my health and wealth. Coming back to energy, in textile industry, almost 13% or 14% is the utility cost. And one of the major costs, because you have spinning and weaving and everything, is the power. So that time I came into this company to establish a power plant which was naphtha based. And we had a lot of challenges on naphtha. So we switched over, we converted the gas turbine to gas based. And we are happily running this power plant, but later on gas prices also, as you all of know, went up. So major problem with fossil fuel is it is limited. And there are a lot of supply hiccups. Very recently, if you see the amount of coal shortage happened, the way the coal prices went up, balance sheet of many companies went fat. That is where the renewable has the importance. It is unlimited. The environmental impact is, I would say, nil, unless we count every drop of it from manufacturing to end. But compared to fossil fuel, that is the way we have to head for. So way back in 2003, through CII, I was involved in, so now my journey to renewables. I was involved with central government as well as state governments in doing the electricity reform. And Electricity Act 2003 came. We are the first company which started open access that time in India. And we had enormous amount of cost benefit. But what we were heading for is preparing ourselves for renewables to come, preparing ourselves to make the full pool of energy which can be used anywhere across the country, so that we can minimize the transmission losses and all other benefits. From there, open access, when the solar energy started coming, we were the first company in Gujarat to establish 1 megawatt of rooftop solar. That was really a pilot project. Nobody in my company was really convinced about it. But when we did the working and when we did the first project, against the 7.5 rupees of utility cost, the power cost there was 5 rupees. And everybody says, "Isme kya hoga? You have 85 megawatt, you are putting up 1 megawatt, so it will give you 200 kilowatt. So what will happen?" But I was convinced that we have to make the first step forward. And then we started working with government. We started talking about net metering. I yet remember I used to meet Saurabh Dalal, who was our energy minister that time. And I came from Germany, a visit from Germany. And today we are talking of 18 gigawatt. At world platform, they were talking that when the first gigawatt power plant will come. From there, from first gigawatt, we put up a 1 megawatt, and I knew that this is the seed which will grow. So first thing needed was the policy reforms, allowing the renewable power to enter into the grid. And we used to draw the diagram because government officials, even energy ministers, कोई convince नहीं है ये neat metering कैसे होगा, power आएगा, उसी से वापस जाएगा, measurement कैसा होगा. So we brought various companies who manufacture the net meters, and I was able to convince energy minister कि this is the future, and you have a commercial benefit into it. Why don't you start manufacturing net meters? And they put up a factory in Gujarat to manufacture the net meters. And that is where the rooftop story started. Then when it came to industrial thing, there are a lot of, again, rooftop was one issue. Then grid disturbance will happen, how the frequency controls will happen. So we started explaining 100 megawatt means 20 megawatt you will get, and so on. And we have to do step by step. Ye kar karke, then with Cleantech, I am very proud to say that that was world's biggest rooftop solar plant that we could establish in a very short time. I think policy was announced, and we started doing this project parallelly with Anuvrat. And before even government officials realized that what kind of loss they can have, it was not significant, though they started getting the pinch of it. We had the plant up and running. After that, in Gujarat, we have done a lot of policy framework. As Jyoti rightly said, the hybrid policy, we have spent hours and hours with government of Gujarat, that solar and wind, they are complementary to each other in terms of time of generation. So we have to club this to minimize the fluctuations happening in the grid. And the hybrid policy 3 years back we could bring up. Of course, it took some time to approve these projects because of COVID and so on. But I think now more than dozen projects, if I'm correct, Anurita, have been approved in Gujarat. And we're talking to Gujarat government to now extend this policy for next 3 years, because not many projects could come up as we were expecting into this. So my saying is, where there is a will, there is a way, number one. So if you are on a cause, you will be able to get it no matter what are the roadblocks. And I always believe, work with the government, work with the policy makers, find the way, find the solutions which are win-win. If it is hurting someone, let us minimize the hurt and make them agree to do something for the society. And that is how the journey, then on canal we had rooftop solar because of solving the space problem. Floating rooftops came in Gujarat and so on. All this happened along with the industry without many, hot arguments. Hot arguments did happen. Opinions will change, but when you work together and once they realize, that we are not only doing it for industry's commercial benefit, but we are also looking at the cause for the society and future, how it will go, then you started getting positive response. And that is where it happened. Numbers, Jyoti has shown how much Gujarat has done. But more than those numbers, I think a lot of innovations that Gujarat has done is very important, which can be replicated. We look forward to what MP has done. We also have taken a lot of inputs from Karnataka, and we have actually given a lot of input to Karnataka government for the present policy. So I think, as Manu has rightly said, that government is not a separate entity. We are all part of government, and we need to work together, because renewable has a lot of commercial benefit, huge amount of environmental benefit. That is the way forward, and we should not spend much time in solving our differences, but we should build as many as we can on renewables. Thank you.
Sir, thank you very much. What an amazing story. What an amazing journey. I mean, I would almost like to take a sort of moment here to reflect, because when we at times run into hurdles and we often complain very often to, like, kind listening ears such as Manu's, that, we are struggling with some government regulation or some other matter. I mean, this is the kind of commitment and effort, that it takes, demonstrated both by Mr. Yadav and by the organization, Arvind Mills, that you just have to keep working away at it. And a very inspirational story. I think the very purpose we had of having this session at some level is so beautifully captured by two people. Immediately on my left is someone who was significant, and one never uses the word singularly responsible, but who's significantly responsible for 1 gigawatt out of those 18 gigawatts you saw up there. And, next to him is someone who's, for like 3 decades or so, in some form or the other, brought about any degree of sustainability. Doesn't have to be power. We are all so sold on the bandwagon of solar, as we all should be. Speaking on behalf of my company, solar and wind is what we are focused on. But the idea is, if the commitment is to do things sustainably and either increasing the profit margins or at least not, like, at a minimal cost, it takes a lot to get it done, but it can be done. That's what I take away from it. That's what I take away from the REWA project. That's what I take away from, the journey Mr. Yadav has shared with us. Manu, please go ahead.
No, I was not wanting to speak, just want to butt in and say one thing, that he mentioned that what he has on his wall behind his table is not the profits or the turnover, but 46 or 47. So that is something that I've noticed with anyone who's active in renewable energy. It might be whichever organization, that there is something beyond your salary, something beyond your position, something beyond, all this that drives you. I'm sure that if, I don't smoke, but I mean, people who do, the due respects to them. I mean, if you're working in a company that makes cigarettes, or you make Coke, I don't have Coke either. So, I mean, then you can't have that sort of passion, that sort of commitment, that sort of pride in what you're doing that this sector gives you. And that's something that I've seen in everyone who's in this sector. It might be in the World Bank, or it might be in a private organization or in the government.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. In fact, the number that we keep track of, as you were speaking, I said hi to Andre right there, Dr. Andre Nobre, head of our O&M. We keep track of 2 numbers: how many gigawatt hours of energy we have generated, right? And the other thing is what you see at the bottom of this pamphlet, where people like Mr. Venkat, who's in the audience, and Raghav, how many megawatts have they installed in order for Andre to run those plants wonderfully with his team. This is not a particular plug for Cleantech Solar. It's just the moment is just so right to kind of call out how these things happen. They don't happen by profit and loss. They don't happen by IRRs, which is what I and my whole team is focused on, and that man right there, Prashant Kothari. It happens with something that goes, there's blood, sweat and tears go into it. And I mean, these are the people who kind of like do it, and we are all, of course, happy to receive the credit for it. That's our job. So with that, the title here is Indian Manufacturing Turns Green. Ashish, you've turned not only the rooftop of virtually every, or trying to, or successfully turned every rooftop, not only in India of Kargil, but that across Southeast Asia, green. So would love to hear your journey. Kargil is a significant player. You've, been at this right since we first met ages ago, and from prior to that. Please tell us like your story, Kargil's story, and anything else that you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, thanks, Anubhav, and the organizers for this session, for inviting me as a panel discussion. I can share a few things about what we have done in India, and especially on the renewable energy, and why this is important. As Mr. Yadav just shared, that the total electricity costs are significant in the utility cost what we have in our manufacturing setups. So this is a very focused area in terms of how we can optimize our costs. So that is one one of the driver. I would say that affordability, the affordable power is one driver. Apart from that, the accessibility of power, which is also another area, another factor when we talk about such renewable portion. And third one is like we have the third factor is very important, sustainability, which the kind of organization I am working with, they are looking for. So if I share about what we have done in India, we as Jyoti was mentioning, 2018 was a year significant contribution coming in RE, especially in Karnataka. We went ahead and did a project there, which is almost 15 megawatts of combined wind and solar hybrid, and we are reaping benefits out of it. The key factors I mentioned, and later on we realized that yes, this is something which we can increase. So we increase those capacities, and now just imagine, so we annually we are able to reduce our carbon footprint is almost 30,000 metric tons of carbon annually we are able to reduce. So that is something which the organizations which are looking into scope 1 and scope 2 carbon emissions reductions, this is one of the area where in scope 2 we can reduce in terms of power we are generating through renewable energy sources. And this is all off-site project, which is and there are a lot of, it's not a very easy path to go with internally as well as externally, but we learned the way, and this is something which we are proud of. And if I talk about similar things in Southeast Asia, very similar, and then I can mention that a couple of projects already executed, and those plants in those countries in Southeast Asia, those are really happy because they are seeing the not only on the P&L numbers, but also the sustainable part or the carbon reductions in those countries. And I can mention a few of the topics which I discussed with Cleantech, especially I can mention one which we are currently evaluating in those Southeast Asia countries, are the floating PVs. And I think I had a discussion with Dr. Andre quite some time back, and those will be the new areas we are currently evaluating and will be moving on.
A lot of power. What is the openness towards buying green attributes? Not necessarily in the literal sense. We mean it in the sense that any type of green attributes that enables you way more than your rooftop projects, way more than your open access projects, which will have some degree of limit still with respect to the connected load. You can procure essentially what's happening in some sense with the Amazons and Googles of the world in the US, and similarly when the regulations come about in the right way for us, or even if the regulations don't come about, the fact that we can strip the green attributes out of brown power sold on the exchange, be that whichever way it might pan out in regulatory terms. We have all learned from Mr. Yadav and Manu that regulatory constraints and regulators have to be nicely fought and kind of solutions found. You can always do that. Once the regulators offer, if it's going to cost more, definitely more than what you could procure at the cheapest, solar project or wind project. Is there openness to spend something on green? And I'll not put you on the spot to say how much, but some indication to give us an idea of what's the degree of openness to just buy the power which is more expensive than the cheapest renewable power because it is green, or buy the green attributes, or in some cases pay more than the grid power, as the case may be. Difficult question. You're the man for it.
So I will maybe answer in one, especially if we talk about Indian context, or any other country's contracts. And when we are talking about power, buying power, affordability is one key, aspect. And when we are talking about big corporates, which are actually having some focus on carbon reductions, or they have some climate considerations, then I would say they would be open to pay some premium. But at the same time, one more thing which I would like to share with the audience is that some organizations like my organization, they are not into buying only green attributes as such without the physical power. So we would like to buy, if it's a blended one, then it's fine. If it is not, then probably the most high likely chance is that we are not going to buy the green attributes separately. So the purpose is to to increase the renewable capacity on the earth. So what we want is that if we are buying power, it's green, then all the attributes within it, and we are getting those. Purpose is to have more capacities being added, right? So separately buying green attributes probably kind of something which probably we will not be thinking about. But yes, if it is coming from with a blended physical power, yes, we will be looking into it. And that is, we don't want to be seen as somebody who is doing greenwashing. So,
yep. And green attributes from new power plants?
That's what I was.
That would be fine.
That is what I was referring to. That addition of capacity is something we'll be looking into.
Right. Because because when you refer to power and buying it together, one has constraints. I mean, when the solar and wind, because of the intermittent nature, one has constraints in terms of that your usage may be 200 megawatts of solar and wind, because you can consume, say, 40 megawatts of brown power, 24/7, 365, and you'll be limited to 40 or 50 based on rooftop and this thing, but you can enable a 160 new set of power plants.
Yeah, that is precisely, Jyoti was talking about VPPAs. So that is something Cargill has already started doing. I think you may see it, and US we are doing it, and we have recently. I think 1 year back we signed some PPAs over there with the wind farm. It's 50 megawatt, a portion which Cargill is taking out of the 200 megawatt park in US, and we will be getting some part of that power will be getting physically, but most of the remaining portion will be mostly sold out on the grid, and the renewable attributes out of that 50 megawatt will be with Cargill.
No, thank you for the additional answer. And gentlemen, just for the 50 megawatt, like a round of applause, please, if you might. Yeah, so hats off to Cargill for initiating that. And, even if it can only be done in the US currently, given the regulations, but regulations are getting close enough here, and in some form or the other, it can be done. We'll not get into it till later, may not have time to get into it, but one can try to sell. So let me in fact do that. Changing my mind is an expertise I have. So, all right. So, Mr. Yadav, I will then ask you sort of a related question. First is the first part of the question, that is there willingness to pay more for the green for green power than in order to enable a larger set of new installed capacity. The second question is sort of an interesting one, that if someone were to say that in many states it's not possible to essentially do open access. But it is possible to do third party. Third party cannot be done due to the charges, which are supposed to have come to zero for last 20 years, but haven't. If one is close to grid power, maybe even cost 40 paisa more than grid power. So a completely classic, solar or wind plant trying to supply power. Obviously, it's not the position that you can answer for the organization per se, but if some people, like Ashish, are willing to pay for green attributes, albeit from new projects only, 50, 60 paisa. Jyoti earlier pointed out that DISCOM is selling power, the green version of it with 50, 60 paisa extra. Is there a case to be made for selling third-party power, getting out of this whole rut of which states allow group captive and which don't, and the openness to pay either grid power rates or higher in order to procure power that is green? So difficult question again, but what do you think, where does industry stand? Because not only do you represent, Arvind Limited, you also represent the Gujarat, industries. So from whichever perspective you wish to answer, we are all kind of keen in the audience here to try to figure out how open is the industry to like the next big leap of faith, which is to, not just look for savings.
I will not say that every industry will shell out more money. So far as industry is concerned, they are there for profit making. So far as their business goes, I think every industry will not accept higher price than what it can get from other sources. Having said that, there are industries which can sell out like ours. I can say we are ready to do that. And in fact, we have purchased a lot of open access power from municipal solid waste at about 20 paisa higher than grid price for more than 2 years. We are as of now purchasing wind power, which is only 5 paisa higher than the grid price. There is no compulsion, but we are doing that. So there are people who will do that. But if you look at the scenario as of now, as Mr. Srivastava also has said, there is a lot of commercial benefit as such there. So where is the bottleneck? Like Arvind today is 45% on renewable, and we do a lot of third-party buying also on renewable. So even then, 35% of my power comes from the conventional sources. So bottleneck is that regulatory framework. And within regulatory framework, the major bottleneck whenever we talk to authorities is that how do they maintain the grid? Number one, there's a technical problem. And number two is what about their profits, because they are losing in this. So I think these are the two problems. So going forward, we have to see that at present renewable power is being stored by the grid. Hence, we have to look at good solutions where we can store this power. And even with that, there are tenders which have come out that where the green power is cheaper than the grid with the storage. And if the present storage price goes down as the volumes increase and the technology advance, so everybody will be on the green. So we have to solve these two problems, what happens to DISCOM, and number two, we have to solve this problem that how efficiently we store the power, green power or the fluctuating power, because it is infirm on the timing. So these are the, I think, two major problems which we have to address. I don't think there is overnight solution to this. So my strategy on this is we do this step by step. So other day when I met SES on the hybrid policy which is being renewed in the, so first question is, yaar aap meri jeb kyun kaatte ho? Why should we sell out money when industry is getting the power at a lower price than the grid? So you are hurting us. So my question was that don't you agree that green power should come? He said 100% agree. Then I said let us share the cost. But in long run, I said DISCOMs have to take a different stance for green power to come in. Unless that is done and that planning is done now, so let them enter into storage. why don't the DISCOMs, enter into setting up the projects which private players are saying, I'm creating competition for you. But DISCOM has to think in a different way for this change which is coming, which in my opinion is unstoppable. So only they can delay it, but it will come. So why not they change themselves, and convert this, this problem into an opportunity for them. So having said that, yes, there will be not only us, many industry which will shell out some more money to buy the green power, because for industries like us, there are tremendous amount of pressure from our customers also. Because we are world's second largest denim exporter. And we have tremendous pressure that you have to do this, you have to do this on the environment. Water we have done zero discharge. Water we have become water neutral, because all our fresh water is now municipal water, which we treat and use in our process. So there we have done it to their satisfaction. But on renewables, we have that pressure, so we will put on additional money also to buy and do the renewables. But as a country or as an earth, we all together have to promote renewables and have to work to remove these two major bottlenecks now. One, what happens to DISCOMs, and second, how do we do the storage and solve this green instability problem.
So Mr. Yadav, you've been reading ahead on the agenda. I can see that. So because that is exactly the next point. But before we go there, is part of the same point, Manu, and I was going to come to you.
I would like to. One of few things that I think that I would disagree with Anuruddh. I don't think it's fair to expect industry to pay more for using green power, because it is putting one in a spot which doesn't make sense. It's very difficult for industry to justify even internally that they would do so. So broadly, three things come to my mind, and there the government has a role. One is that you have to have some sort of a carbon tax to make the non-green power actually costlier, because if the externalities have to be translated into real terms. There are actual externalities in terms of climate change. Look at what Pakistan has suffered, and they are our neighbor, and people who believe so strongly in Akhand Bharat, we should think it's actually a part of what you want your country to be. So we have suffered so much from climate change. Same thing is happening in so many parts of India. So that externality has to be transferred to economic terms. So there has to be some sort of a carbon tax to compare the non-green power should be costly. The other thing is to have some sort of a viability gap funding for green power. So you talked of municipal solid waste. Now, frankly, municipal solid waste or biomass-based power is more expensive than wind or solar. So if you want to use them, we need to have some sort of viability gap funding. And if we fail to do anything on either of these two, then the way out is that we have to have some sort of regulations. Like we have renewable purchase obligations, which are becoming increasingly meaningless with the costs coming down. But you have to have them some sort of an RPO sort of thing for DISCOMs, as also for private industry which procures power on open access. Other things of course are happening. For example, insurance for non-green plants is increasingly becoming more and more expensive, because no one can be sure that a new thermal power plant would actually last for 25 years. The way things are moving, if I were to put my money in a thermal plant which makes sense today, it might make sense even 10 years from now, but to imagine that a thermal plant would actually be running 25 years from now, does it make sense? So, this sort of reasoning also has to percolate that, this non-green thing can't perhaps continue for 25 years for both the reasons. It might become unsustainable, with the sort of climate change impacts that we are seeing to go ahead and do all that. And secondly, also that it might just become unviable. If solar costs continue the way they are. For example, very often people say that Stone Age was not over when people ran out of stones. People discovered something better. So the same thing is going to happen here. We would not stop using coal because we run out of coal. We would stop using coal because, it was so stupid to use coal.
So, excellent point, and I think we would like to, I think Jyoti will have to leave some of the topics alone because in one form or the other we've covered them or otherwise have run out of time. But I'd like to end with one question, Manu sir, to you, because Mr. Yadav very beautifully raised the two bottlenecks. So the question to you, and I know you have to soon go, so we will pretty much wrap up after that. What happens to the DISCOM? What happens to the DISCOM? How do we help them survive if the state will not step into its obligation to cross-subsidize? Or any other solution you have in mind? What happens to the DISCOM?
See, say it was said, very often it's said that DISCOMs have to help green energy. Now, I would say that, see, everyone acts in their own economic interest, including DISCOMs. And if we are talking about privatization of DISCOMs, then we cannot be saying that DISCOMs should have any social obligations. DISCOMs also have to work, with an economic rationale. So now, if we have to have twin challenges of DISCOMs functioning on economic principles and promoting green energy, then we have to have changed the way they work. So one of the first things that comes to mind is really that they should increase their fixed charges and reduce. There is a certain amount of cost that DISCOM spends on laying down the wire on which the current flows, and having long-term power procurement contracts. And there is some regulator there. So one option could be that they have to have a higher fixed cost, reduced variable cost, which would cover their cost and which would make it less binding on them to sort of oppose open access or oppose net metering. The other thing, of course, I have myself handled DISCOMs for 3 years. So I would say that a lot of problems with DISCOMs are of their own creation. So DISCOMs point fingers at renewable energy and say that everything is because of this new kid on the block. But actually, renewable energy is still far too small to be creating all those problems for DISCOMs. The problems of DISCOMs predate renewable energy. DISCOMs have been loss-making even before solar energy became that much pervasive. So the problems of DISCOMs are really the problems of governance of the country. For example, I know more about Madhya Pradesh. So the most ungovernable or the worst governed parts of Madhya Pradesh are that Gwalior belt. Where there was the dacoits, you must have seen these films on Pan Singh Tomar, etc. So that is the least, the worst governed part, and perhaps the part adjacent to UP, Allahabad, etc. This again not very well governed. So the areas where there is most, let's say, poor health coverage are these areas. The areas where there is most cheating, organized cheating in the board exams is these areas. And the areas where there is most electricity theft are again these areas. And those parts of Madhya Pradesh that are better governed, like let's say Western Madhya Pradesh, Central Madhya Pradesh, there you would find none of these problems. The health parameters are better. There is no organized attempts at cheating in board exams, and the DISCOMs also perform better. So actually it is a failure of governance. So we have to address the basic failure of governance if we actually want to make our country great. And having then better performing DISCOMs would actually happen. So actually the failure is there. And actually it's a wider societal failure, because most people who work in government departments actually belong to those areas. The way the government operates and the democratic system operates, people who say are from Gwalior, if they're posted in, let's say, south of Madhya Pradesh, they would do everything to try to finally work in Gwalior. So the Gwalior society and the Gwalior DISCOM and the Gwalior Health Department and the Gwalior Education Department, they all work in a similar fashion. The same would be true of Kerala. The same would be true of UP or various parts of UP, for example. So then finally it comes down to how that sector of society is operating. And if we have to improve that so that the governance improves and the DISCOMs also improves.
Couldn't possibly agree more.
So
everything that's... Sir, please.
So I was a bit hesitant to speak about the DISCOMs, which you very frankly and very nicely said. So what happens here, there are two problems. One is the present efficiency of the discoms and how do they survive. So to the extent that their survival, if they are good, to a great extent, if not ideal, then what will be the load that will come on to them because of the renewables? And you sitting at Niti Aayog and the positions where you can really influence is, so which is a problem for me. Whenever we go and speak, we don't say कि ये तो आपका inefficiency है. By the way, discoms of Gujarat are making profit. And the only logic they give when it goes, the file goes to finance is that, sir, इतना करोड़ कम हो जाएगा, हमको आप approve कर दो, we allow this, right? So I think either we have to segregate these two problems and make a way for renewables to go. Then only issue remains is the storage. And there may be an additional cost of storage, which I think everyone else will be able to bear that. And how do we segregate these two problems, and how do we rationalize the impact of renewables on discoms and pass it on to the industry or whoever is the user? I think that is the main agenda we have to address to, in my opinion. Thanks for really throwing this light.
So, fine. We just want a round of applause for Manu sir, because he has to leave. So, we shall catch up with you later. Yeah. All right. So gentlemen, we have run way over time. I mean, we started quite a bit late, and we've hopefully not made it much later than that. No, I think we finished it. Manu sir, so please, can we just get a photograph? So I think we'll just open the floor up for one or two questions. If you have any urge, there's one in the back, just perhaps two questions, because we are standing between people and lunch, so shouldn't do that. All right.
Yeah. So my name is Madhavan. So my question is to Mr. Yadav and Ashish. So we have been talking about drivers in terms of regulations or technology advancements, which is leading to more and more adoption of renewables. So my question is about this, the ESG wave or the investor pressure, which is now coming in a big way, at least may not be much in India, but at least in the other parts of the world. So as part of that, most companies or these ESG funds and all the people start tracking the scope emissions, and that becomes a very important metric to track. So how does it impact the companies? Like when we are talking about corporate procurement programs and corporate ESG ratings and all the stuff, where so how does that is it going to be a next major driver for sustainability and renewable adoption? Or because that if investors keep asking for better performance, better sustainability performance, and like companies like yours who are also major exporters, like when your customers will also be asking better performance from you. So how is that going to have an impact on this Indian manufacturers? So maybe both of you can. I mean, of course, you're not a listed firm, so I don't know. You may have a different take on that, but still.
So maybe I can take this and share you something which my organization is now looking into. So as I mentioned before, that we are currently looking at scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. Now we are also moving towards scope 3 as well. So where scope 3 entails your entire supply chain. So your partners, your supply partners, your warehousing, your transportation, everything in your supply value chain is part of that scope 3. So if corporates or companies are looking to to reduce their scope 3, so that definitely that is going to be a future in terms of one company asking or requiring another, supply partner or chain to reduce their emissions. And that is something which I think the driver coming is from the climate consideration, where we have, recently we saw Paris agreements, and then last year we saw Glasgow COP26. So there are commitments made by countries and there are commitments made by corporates. So if more and more corporates are, willing and, making commitments, I think that will go, very long way, and I think that will support the ESG overall.
Okay, I think we'll just have to maybe call it a day there, right there. So, if you have any questions, please, the speakers will be available for some part of the day today. With that, please, I would, request the audience a round of applause for our speakers, and a round of applause for yourselves. You've been a wonderful audience, participating, agree and everything. And before we do, I would request everyone, all of us, a round of applause for the person who's organized all of this, Divya from all our team. So this is all come together because of her.
Thank you, sir. Shri Srivastav mentioned that what followed the Stone Age was Bronze Age, but what ensued here was absolute gold. So thank you so much. We'd like to present you a token of appreciation, and for that, I'd request Mr. Amit Watts, the representative from Informa Markets, to please come up and present the mementos.
I would like to thank Cleantech, for this lovely session. I hope all of you guys enjoyed. We are thankful to Dr. Joshi, who's always been supportive to REI and all our RE initiatives, especially Divya. He's already mentioned Divya. She's worked wonders, putting up this session. So thank you, Divya, and thank you to all our panelists over here. You've been wonderful. I'm so sorry I've been running around, so please excuse me on that. So we would like to start with our panelists. The first trophy, the first memento, a souvenir from our side for 15 years of togetherness, please.